Karen lost her mind when she saw the tools in my garage boxes, sealed cases, and a locked cabinet. She didn't ask questions. She didn't knock on my door. Just called the police and told them I was storing explosives in a residential neighborhood. The cops showed up. The street shut down. Neighbors panicked. But when I calmly opened the door, showed them my ID, and walked them into my secured garage, Karen realized exactly who she'd tried to mess with. Because I'm not just a neighbor. I'm an FBI explosives expert, and I've been tracking everything she did. Ever had someone jump to the worst conclusions about you? Hit subscribe if you believe in facts over fear, and drop your country or city below. So, I know where this story is being heard loudest. When I bought the little gray house at the edge of Foxbridge Heights, I thought I was finally getting the peace I'd earned. 15 years in federal explosive ordnance, disposally a running point on bomb threats, high-stakes field clearances, and counterterrorism missions had taken its toll. My hands were still steady, my instincts still sharp, but my heart needed quieter days. I wanted time with my wife Leela, time to build something stable for our daughter Maya, and a garage big enough to tinker, teach, and keep some of my legacy safe. I picked a house on the outskirts of town, not too far from Leela's work at the hospital, not too close to my own federal office, and far enough away from the constant buzz of city life. The garage was everything I needed. Spacious, insulated, reinforced. I had permits, had protocols. The gear I stored wasn't live-not anymore. It was decommissioned training equipment, cases of gear used for workshops I taught, mock explosives for field education. All safe, all legal, all properly registered. But Karen didn't care about permits or facts. Karen cared about control. She was the self-declared queen of Foxbridge Heights HOA, a tightly wound woman in her 60s with a stiff bob haircut, pastel windbreakers, and the kind of cold smile that made every word feel like a warning. From the day she saw us unloading gear into the garage, me carrying heavy boxes, Layla rolling in sealed trunks, her eyes narrowed. She made no attempt to introduce herself. She just stared, arms folded, lips tight. I nodded at her. She didn't nod back. I figured she'd either get over it or get bored. I was wrong. Within a week, we received a typed letter with no signature. Concerned neighbor reports, unusual equipment storage, please clarify purpose and safety. The HOA seal sat awkwardly on the top. I didn't respond. My permits were legal. My property was private. And I owed no one explanations for tools I used to train first responders. Then came the wellness check. 2 uniformed officers at my door on a Tuesday morning, polite but firm. Mr. Walker, we received a tip about potential hazardous materials on site. I raised an eyebrow, invited them in, and walked them straight to the garage. I opened every box, explained every label, showed them the safety certifications. Then I pulled out my federal badge. Their eyes widened. One of them, Officer Ramirez, nodded with respect. "This is top-tier stuff," he muttered, almost in awe. "Why would anyone report this?" I didn't answer, but I knew. Karen watched from her window the entire time, her phone pressed to her cheek, snapping pictures through the blinds. That would have been enough for most people to stop. But not Karen. No, she doubled down. 3 days later, I came home to find my driveway blocked by a hazmat team. Full gear, local sheriff, fire department. Someone had filed an anonymous tip claiming active explosive storage with detonation risk. The neighborhood was locked down. News vans were already circling. My daughter's school bus had to stop 2 blocks away. Layla was nearly in tears trying to explain to neighbors that we weren't criminals. I got out of my truck calmly, walked up to the commanding officer, and said 3 words. "I work federal." I handed him my badge, my permits, and my clearance documentation. I guided them through every inch of my setup. Half an hour later, the lockdown was lifted, and every officer on the scene apologized as they packed up their gear. But the damage was done. My neighbor's people who once waved at Maya, who once complimented Leela's garden now, looked at us with hesitation. Karen, however, was glowing. She stood near her lawn with fake concern painted across her face, pretending to console another neighbor while clearly basking in the chaos she'd caused. That was it. I wasn't going to let it slide. I began compiling everything, every HOA letter, every anonymous complaint, every photo I caught her taking through her open blinds. Even the timestamps on the 911 calls that matched her neighborhood watch-walk times. I installed additional security cameras this time, not just for my garage but on every side of my home. I looped the footage to a private cloud and sent a copy to my Division S legal liaison, not for retaliation but to prepare, because when you've diffused bombs long enough, you recognize when one is about to go off. And Karen had just lit the fuse. She didn't know that while she was busy trying to paint me as a threat. I was already quietly opening a formal case through the HOA Regulatory Board and consulting with internal federal legal counsel. I wasn't acting out of pride. I was acting to protect my family. I collected her recorded lies, her written complaints, her fake emergency call logs, and eyewitness statements from 3 neighbors who admitted Karen had told them he's definitely building something dangerous in that garage and he probably learned it overseas. The casual racism, the fear-mongering, the harassment hit wasn't just personal now. It was unlawful. Then came the town hall meeting. I didn't plan on going. But a week before, I received a letter directly from the HOA due to repeated safety complaints regarding your residence. The board is considering a formal investigation and possible community action. That was my cue. I showed up not in uniform, but in a dark blue suit, with my credentials neatly displayed in a leather folder. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stood, greeted the board, and said, "Since you're discussing me, I figured I should be here." Karen's face drained of color. She was sitting front row smug as ever until I handed the board printed documentation proving the legality of every item in my garage, copies of state and federal permits, and detailed diagrams showing my work with Homeland Security, including recent community training sessions for explosive safety awareness that she herself could. V attended if she'd bothered to ask. Then I played the audio. Security footage from my porch captured Karen telling another neighbor, "If they don't kick him out, I'll make him look like a terrorist." Gasps echoed through the room. I followed it with footage of her trespassing at night, peeking into the garage windows with a flashlight, and then the kicker. A statement from Officer Ramirez, filed with the county, confirming that every report filed about my home had been false or exaggerated, and that the anonymous caller used the same exact language each time. The room turned on her in seconds. Board members looked at her with disgust. One member, an elderly man named Vincent, shook his head and said, "You've put this entire neighborhood at risk over lies." Another asked why she hadn't disclosed her personal crusade during previous board meetings. She stammered, claimed she was only trying to protect the children, but I calmly responded, "You endangered my daughter's safety by calling in a false explosives report and triggering a hazmat lockdown. My little girl now flinches when she hears sirens." Silence. Then a voice from the back of the room. "You need to resign, Karen." She did. That night, effective immediately. But the story didn't end there. I filed a harassment and defamation lawsuit against her, with video evidence, officer statements, and over a dozen resident testimonies. The case was airtight. She settled quickly, hoping to keep it quiet. The terms included a financial payout, mandatory public apology, and the sale of her home within 6 months. A for sale sign appeared on her lawn in less than 3 weeks. When the moving truck came, no one waved goodbye. My daughter drew with chalk on the sidewalk, while Leela gardened with a quiet smile. The new family that moved into Karen's house brought over cookies, introduced themselves kindly, and even asked if I'd be willing to teach their teenage son about bomb disposal. He was a science nerd, fascinated by robotics. I said, "Yes. And now, my garage is still my workspace. My wife still volunteers at the hospital. Maya plays with neighbors again. The whispers are gone. The stares have turned into invitations. And the woman who once tried to blow up our peace with lies, she learned the hard way. When you mess with a man who diffuses bombs for a living, you better make sure you're not the one lighting the fuse."